Thank you, Tom. I'm one of the foot soldiers in this new Center for the History of Political Economy. And before I talk about Maynard Keynes for a few moments, I'd like to just express my own very deep appreciation to Mr. Pope for making possible this center. We have thought about such a center for many, many years, and it never seemed possible that we could have it. And now it's here with a dynamic new director in Bruce Caldwell, and I think you're going to see a lot of activity coming out of it in the years ahead. So many, many thanks to the Pope Foundation. My main message this evening is that John Maynard Keynes, Maynard to his friends, contrary to popular belief and recent caricatures in the media, was much more than a tax and spend liberal. Indeed, he was a liberal only in the original sense of that term, in that he placed the highest value on human freedom, and he believed that this freedom could most likely be gained and preserved within a smoothly functioning competitive market economy. Unlike many of the economists of his time, notably the so-called American institutionalists, with whom he is often mistakenly grouped, he was deeply suspicious of government and was constantly searching for solutions to economic problems through actions in the private sector rather than the public sphere. Maynard Keynes served in government for extended periods throughout his career, so he really knew whereof he wrote. Keynes is best known, of course, for observing that a serious flaw in the competitive market economy is that the aggregate demand for goods and services tends to fluctuate over time and may be inadequate on occasion to sustain the potential production of the economy. Unemployment and stagnation may result. Because he believed that monetary policy was unable to stimulate aggregate demand at critical junctures, he turned to fiscal policy rather reluctantly, to taxation and public expenditure. So how is the Bloomsbury Group, that collection of artists and intellectuals with whom Keynes loved to hang out, and whose art is exhibited in this museum, related to Keynes's pioneering macroeconomics? In several ways, I suggest. First, Maynard arrived at his conclusions about how the economy worked only after abandoning the simple rational actor hypothesis that was increasingly accepted by his economics colleagues beyond Bloomsbury. He looked for guidance about human behavior to the literature of psychology, the writings of Sigmund Freud, Wilfred Trotter, and others. In this, his Bloomsbury friends joined enthusiastically. Their interest in human behavior, like that of Maynard, was whetted by their experiences during World War I, a conflict in which they found just about everyone to be irrational. The Hogarth Press, operated by Leonard and Virginia Woolf, published the complete works of Freud, translated by Lytton Strachey's brother James. Lytton, whose portraits we can see in this exhibition, used insights from psychology to revolutionize biography and autobiography, what we now call life writing, through his collection of essays entitled Eminent Victorians. Strachey's biographical style, ironic, sardonic, satirical, was picked up by Keynes in his own widely influential Economic Consequences of the Peace and in other writings, collected for the most part in 2 volumes he called Essays in Biography and Essays in Persuasion. The second approach to the economy taken by Keynes from his Bloomsbury friends, in addition to the use of psychology and biography, became the centerpiece of his macroeconomics. This was a clear focus on the demand side of markets. The Bloomsburys discovered early on that the major problem in the arts was not to encourage artists to produce, but to persuade demanders to buy. And demanders, they discovered, were complicated creatures. Keynes specifically and repeatedly rejected what he considered the simplistic Benthamite picture of humans as homogeneous and predictable utility maximizers. He agreed with the other Bloomsburys that humans purchase goods and services for reasons other than those that could easily be subsumed under the term optimization. It was not only to the celebrated phenomenon of animal spirits that Keynes turned for an explanation of human unpredictability. He examined also the particular buying characteristics of various categories of economic actor, the mercurial expectations of investors, the fearfulness of many seeking greater liquidity, and the stolid consumption behavior of the mass of the population. Keynes knew well how his close Bloomsbury friend Roger Fry had decomposed the demand for the arts into categories of demanders with different behavioral characteristics, to which Fry gave names like classicists, Philistines, snobbists, and the herd. Maynard performed a similar decomposition for the economy as a whole. The others in the Bloomsbury group helped to give to Maynard a deep appreciation of the manifold consequences of failure in a market economy. More conventional economists in his time, as in ours, have been inclined to see recession and depression as regrettable phenomena that cause inefficiency, meaning loss of output and resources misapplied. The Bloomsburys, with their deep concern for history and current events, could see that economic failure could lead quickly also to social and political turmoil, with dire consequences. Humans, they observed, were reluctant to endure very much economic suffering, and if a plausible solution were promised them, they turned easily to dictators and totalitarian rule, as they did in Germany and Italy in the 1930s. In 1925, Leonard Woolf wrote an insightful pamphlet for the Hogarth Press entitled Fear in Politics. Maynard Keynes' general theory, a decade later, might well have been called Fear in Economics. But the impact of Bloomsbury on Keynes went well beyond his macroeconomics. It went for a start to the deep philosophical question of what is the purpose of human life, and therefore of the economy. At the time, when national accounts were being constructed for the first time and being taken as a measure of human progress between the two world wars, the Bloomsburys were groping for a richer measure of human accomplishment. This they called civilization. The notion had its origins in the dictum of the Cambridge ethicist G.E. Moore that the ultimate values in human life lay in states of mind resulting from the pursuit of truth, beauty, and love. Moore's message was restated by Roger Fry to be concerned with the imaginative life of human beings, meaning their creative engagement with literature, the arts, and pure science. The utilitarian metric of the consumption of goods and services per capita was rejected by the Bloomsburys as an input measure, missing the essence of human accomplishment. To accept this dictum was an exceptionally long jump for a prominent economist like Keynes, away from his economist brethren and toward his Bloomsbury friends, but he took it with alacrity. Taking account of this focus on civilization as the standard by which human progress should be judged, Keynes' unusual personal life can be understood. He insisted that humans generally should move beyond the Benthamite prescription in which they spent their time pondering consumption alternatives using a pleasure-paying calculus. Maynard urged that instead they devote any spare time to sustaining the imaginative life, especially through participation in the activities of non-governmental organizations in ways that made use of their highest skills. Following this principle, Keynes himself spent many of his own waking hours promoting the arts through the Camargo Society for the Ballet, the Cambridge Arts Theatre, the Royal Opera House Covent Garden, the Contemporary Art Society, the London Artists Association, and other groups. Perhaps his most lasting imprint on the arts is as the principal designer of the Council for the Encouragement of Music and the Arts and its successor organization, the Arts Council of Great Britain. These sought to provide a vehicle for public support of the arts with minimal public control. The model lies at the roots of the National Endowment for the Arts in the United States, the Canada Council, and other arts funding agencies created after World War II. What lessons may we draw from this unusual life of perhaps the most influential economist of the 20th century? One may be that there is a stronger case than most economists will admit for the broadly interdisciplinary education and experience that shaped his world. We may be permitted even to speculate that if more of our own macroeconomists had had a life more like that of John Maynard Keynes, we might not be in the mess we are in today. A symbolic act by Keynes when he was raised to the peerage was to select for his title not Lord Keynes of Cambridge, nor Lord Keynes of the City, places with which he is most often and most commonly linked, but instead Lord Keynes of Tilton, after the humble little house in Sussex next to the Charleston farmhouse, where he spent many of his happiest hours with his Bloomsbury friends. Thank you.